Caitlin Clark is in Istanbul. Let that sink in. The most marketable player in women's basketball history, the athlete who single-handedly dragged the WNBA into primetime, is overseas. And the question nobody in the league's front office wants to answer right now is, did they push her there? Because what's unfolding behind the scenes of this league is bigger than one player boarding a flight. The WNBA is sitting on the most valuable moment in its entire 27-year existence, and according to the players, the league is actively fumbling it. Here's where things stand. Negotiations over the new collective bargaining agreement recently hit a wall. The league came back to players late at night with a revised offer. Players reviewed it, and what they found wasn't a breakthrough, it was a distraction. The one issue every player wanted addressed, revenue sharing, had barely been touched. What the league did adjust was the salary cap, nudging it up by roughly half a percentage point. In dollar terms, that translates to somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 more per team. Not per player, per team. That distinction matters enormously, and here's why. A higher salary cap doesn't guarantee a single player sees one extra dollar. It simply gives team ownership the option to spend slightly more if they choose to. One player on one roster might benefit. Everyone else stays exactly where they were. That's not a raise. That's a ceiling being lifted in a room where most people are already sitting on the floor. Sophie Cunningham said it plainly on her podcast, Show Me Something. She laid out the core frustration. The league keeps moving pieces the players never asked to move, while the one structural issue at the center of this fight goes untouched. And that issue is revenue sharing. Cunningham broke it down with a comparison that's hard to ignore. In the NBA, when a jersey sells for $100, the split between the league and its players runs roughly 50-50. Half to the league, half back to the players who made that jersey worth buying. In the WNBA, according to Cunningham, that equation looks completely different, with the league absorbing the overwhelming share of merchandise revenue while players collect a fraction. Now, before that comparison hardens into a verdict, there's a layer underneath it that changes the entire conversation. The NBA has been generating consistent profit for decades. The WNBA has not. By most accounts, the league has operated at a financial loss for the majority of its existence, all 27 years of it. Only recently has there been any serious speculation that the league might be closing in on profitability. And even that remains unconfirmed, because the WNBA has not released official financial statements to support it. Even Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, was careful with his words when this topic came up in a televised interview. He pushed back on the revenue-sharing framing directly, signaling that the league isn't structured around that model, at least not yet. And that word "yet" is doing a lot of work right now. Revenue sharing is not a complicated concept. You take the profit, you divide it, but it only functions when there is stable, reliable profit to divide. Committing to a guaranteed 50-50 split when revenue figures are still volatile isn't generosity from a business standpoint, it's exposure. So the league's counter-proposal has focused on expanding the schedule, arguing that more games generate more broadcast content. More broadcast content attracts more media money, and more media money eventually becomes the profit that makes revenue sharing viable. Players aren't buying that logic. More games means more physical demand, more travel, more risk of injury, all without the structural financial guarantee they're asking for. They're not being offered a share of future growth. They're being offered more work toward it. And then there's the elephant in every room this league enters right now. Caitlin Clark. The ratings data is not subtle. Games featuring Clark have pulled audiences that dwarf everything else the WNBA has produced in years. The visibility gap between Clark-involved broadcasts and the rest of the schedule is significant enough that it raises a legitimate long-term question, one the league should be deeply uncomfortable with. What does viewership look like when that singular draw is no longer available? What happens when the novelty cycles out, or when a career-altering injury changes the calculus overnight? These aren't hypothetical concerns. They're the exact variables a league with 27 years of financial losses should be stress testing before locking into major structural commitments. And to be fair to the league's negotiating position, that context explains why they're moving cautiously. But here's what makes this moment genuinely dangerous. Reports indicate that a significant number of players are prepared to sit out the 2026 season entirely rather than accept a deal that doesn't include meaningful revenue-sharing reform. That's not posturing. That's a calculated bet, and it's a high-risk one on both sides. A lost season doesn't pause fan attention. It redirects it. Summer is one of the most competitive windows in American sports. Baseball, soccer, tennis, and a growing number of new professional leagues are all competing for the same casual viewer. Momentum once broken rarely rebuilds on the same trajectory. If the WNBA goes dark for a year at the exact moment it was generating its highest ever cultural visibility, the recovery path is not guaranteed. So what this negotiation actually comes down to is a collision between two completely different clocks. Players are operating on the clock of right now. They've watched this league grow. They've watched their names and faces drive ratings, sell merchandise, and fill arenas. And they want compensation that reflects the value they're generating today, not a promise tied to a financial future the league hasn't proven yet. The league is operating on a longer clock, Decades of losses have made them conservative. They see the momentum, they believe in the trajectory, but they want to build the foundation before they start dividing what's built on top of it. Neither position is irrational, but they are incompatible at this moment, and that incompatibility is exactly why these talks have stalled. The players believe the leverage they hold right now, the ratings, the cultural moment, the global spotlight that put Caitlin Clark on a flight to Istanbul, will never be stronger than it is today. The league believes that leverage is still fragile, still dependent on too few variables, and that the financial architecture needs more time before it can support what the players are demanding. One side is right, the other is about to find out the hard way.